So our first item of business is the introduction of Neil Pukesh, Operations Manager of the Poirier Sport and Leisure Complex, by our General Manager of Parks, Recreation and Culture Services, Lori McKay.
Thank you very much. I would actually ask our Manager of Recreation, Joyce Fordyce, to invite Neil Pukesh up to the podium for a brief introduction.
Welcome.
Welcome. Am I on?
You're live.
Oh, right. It was a perfect opportunity today, being our first committee meeting back, and Neil's first day on the job, to take this opportunity to introduce him to you. Neil begins today with the city in the newly created Operations Manager job at the Poirier Sport and Leisure Complex. So, great chance to introduce him to all of you. And I'd like to give you a little bit of background on Neil, just so you have a little bit of information on him. He brings a solid background in sport facility management, community sport relationships, the recreation programming, and large special event management, as well as extremely high customer service standards. His recent experience and background is he has been the general manager of the Canlan Burnaby 8 Rinks Complex, General Manager of Ice Sports North Shore, a Maple Ridge and Pitt Meadows Parks Commissioner, and is a Director of Athletics for Kids Foundation. So as he settles in over the next 3 months, some of his main responsibilities are going to be transitioning from construction to a fully operational facility, and working with that Sports Center user group and all those sport community folks up on Poirier. So we'll welcome Neil to our team, and I'm sure you'll be seeing him around and working with me. His office will be at Poirier Sport and Leisure Complex, and he'll start up there, I guess, later today. So, thank you.
Welcome, Neil.
Welcome. Welcome.
Item 2 are minutes of the Recreation, Sports and Culture Standing Committee meeting held on Monday, July 26, 2010. The recommendation is that the committee approve those minutes.
So move.
Second.
All in favor? Unanimous?
And item 3 is a delegation. Ms. Helen Daniels and Ms. Cindy Paddington of ArtsConnect. I'll just ask them to come forward at this time.
Welcome.
Good afternoon, I guess it is. Cindy Paddington is one of our directors. She had planned to be here, but she was unable to adjust with the schedule of the timing. But but she did make a comment, though, that she thought the committee was very aptly named, since all three in combination, recreation, sport, and leisure, are vital in providing the balance we need for healthy families and healthy communities. So she couldn't make it, but Sherry Carroll, another of our directors, is here with us in the audience. So first of all, I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to share some of the highlights of current and upcoming activities. I'd briefly like to talk about 4 topics, and some of them are kind of tongue twisters, so bear with me. The first one is Swaparama Rama. The next is Pechakucha, then Arts Door and Water's Edge. So I have distributed a brief outline, and while I speak, if I can get this working properly, you might recall I was here in the spring to, actually I was modeling a jumper made out of a gray t-shirt from Swaparama. This time I have a bag that was created at Swaparama. But I'm just going to play this little video so you can have some imagery while I'm talking. And this is created by a 14-year-old about the last event. So the event was such a success. We had about 400 people there, ranging from children, seniors, families. And it was such a big success that we decided we'd do it again. And we are doing it again on Saturday, October 23rd, from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. And it's going to be, again, in partnership with Douglas College, and it'll be up the road on Pine Tree at the David Lamb campus. So the first event was free. This time we'll be charging a nominal amount for entry. And just to refresh your memories, it involves a clothing swap with a creative twist. Attendees swap and then embellish clothing, and there's lots of help there if they need it. People that can sew, paint, screen print, button making, stenciling. And this time, because the event comes up a week before Halloween, we're going to have a separate station for making Halloween costumes. So I do have some lovely posters that have been made up by Douglas College, and so I will leave some here that can be posted here at City Hall. So now, moving on to Pechacucha. These people are showing off the things that they made. There. Okay. So Pechacucha started in Tokyo in 2003. And the idea was that artists can display their artwork in galleries, but what do other creative people do, like designers, architects, just the whole other realm of creative people? So, how do they share their ideas about what they're doing and what inspires them? So Pechacucha is an event that provides a forum. It involves 20 slides, presenters showing 20 slides for 20 seconds each. So that's about 6.5 minutes. And generally at an event, there would be about a dozen presenters. So it provides an innovative means of showcasing creativity, and it has now spread to over 350 cities around the world. We've experienced the event in Vancouver. I've been with some of our board members to the event in Vancouver, which started about 3 years ago, and it started in a theater with about 300 seats, and it has grown to selling out. The last one was at the Queen Elizabeth Theater and sold out, which is about 2,200 seats. So theirs has grown incredibly, and I've been going into Vancouver for it. And we thought, why not here? So basically what I'd like to announce today is that we applied to be a city organizer, and we've been approved as the official organizer for Pechacucha Coquitlam.
Oh, very nice.
Congratulations.
And this is the website. This is a global website, and you can see, once you log on, it'll show a map. At the bottom here, it shows some other, where is the bottom? Anyway, bottom left corner. Some other cities around here, and you can see that it says, find a city event near you. And last time it just opened when I did that. There we go. So on the right-hand side, under your area, around the middle on the right-hand side, this isn't working for me. There, it says, we believe you are close to Coquitlam, Canada. We display a list below of other cities close to this area. So there's Coquitlam is there, Vancouver, Whistler, Victoria, Seattle, Tacoma. Those are the closest ones to here. And those times that you see under all those posters, that's the time until the next Pechacucha in each of those cities. So we are just developing our presence on this website, and it'll be up shortly. So we're planning our first one for Monday, November 13th at Evergreen Cultural Center, and we're going to start small and grow it from there. We're going to be in the rehearsal studio. And this gives us a unique way to connect with and showcase the talents of local cultural creatives whose work, up until now, for us anyway, might be under the radar, and for others in the community as well. So it's great for community building and networking, and we have got volunteers working with us to organize this, and we plan to do 4. Basically, we have a commitment to do 4 within a year. And so generally it costs $10. It's people can have a drink, watch this. We'll have a sort of cabaret seating. And the main focus that I want to have on ours that has gone kind of wild in Vancouver is to keep it small so that people can actually talk in between, and in the intermission there's a break and have some entertainment. So I'm really excited about that. I've watched it grow in Vancouver, and I just thought it was our turn. Another initiative that we're working on is called Art Store. Some of you might be familiar with this already. I know I have forwarded information to Councillor Linda Riemer on that. It's a welcoming and inclusive communities project, and we're involved in partnership with Success and BC Healthy Communities. So it focuses on working with youth, and they're directly involved in this, 13 to 18 years old, who are newcomers and new immigrants to this area, to the region actually, they're going to be exploring ways that they can become more involved in the arts and cultural community with different, purposes as participants in the community, volunteers, or potentially as future employees. So our role has been to act as a community liaison. We brought a lot of groups together that are part of this, our local arts centers, youth programmers, youth service organizations. And we're also on the working group that is going to be meeting once a month with the youth, so that we're forming relationships with these youth that are involved in the program. There'll be about 15 youth. They're going to start meeting weekly. They'll be meeting weekly with the project coordinator and going out into the field. And the working group meets with them once a month. So the project is just getting underway now. They did some great recruitment in the summer, believe it or not. It was a little bit harder with school being out. But the project runs till March, and I'll keep you posted as it goes along. And the last one is Water's Edge. Again, we're very much into partnerships in the local community. So we're partnering with Evergreen Cultural Center and Coastal Sound. What has happened is that the event had happened for the last 2 years, and that was going to be about it because the funding that had been received for it isn't continuing. However, ArtsConnect is a member of the Assembly of BC Arts Councils, and we're eligible to apply for provincial funding that's been specifically set aside for festivals to be held in February 2011. So we believe that we have a good chance of being successful in our application, and the idea would be to partner with these groups and put on Water's Edge again, a slightly revamped one. And I know that there are a few arts councils that would be in a position to do this, and we're going to take advantage of existing programming already in place and then add to it with some of the more successful things that were done in this past spring, which would be the drum circle, guitar jam, and the singer-songwriter sessions. And so basically we are working together to put the application together. It's due October 6th. We are supposed to hear in November. And you may have heard about this in the news. There's been some controversy about this because of all the funding cuts, and then suddenly $3 million going towards festivals in February. So the way we look at it is we're here to serve our community. Here's an opportunity to keep something going that's been successful in the past. And so that's what we're going to try to do. So that's about it. I want to thank you again for the opportunity, and just to let you know that these are a few of the ways that we're working on initiatives that tie in with the city's interests in facilitating active participation, encouraging creativity, and making arts, culture, and heritage accessible to everyone.
Thanks, Helen. You've really raised the bar on presentations, I think. Does anybody have any questions?
Thank you. Actually, I appreciate that because I was expecting we were going to be in the little committee room, so I wasn't expecting to be in here. We were told that, but anyway.
That's good.
I was excited to share the news.
I just want to take a moment to acknowledge how the hard work it takes to put on these kinds of broad-ranging community festivals, and that you're talking about 4 in the next, looks like, when was Pecha Kuchu?
That's going to be November, so it goes from October 23rd, Pecha Kuchu is
so
November 15th.
you're talking about 4 in the next 6 months.
Something like that.
So my hat's off to you and to the rest of the folks that work with you in ArtsConnect. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'm pleased to see that you're not relying on the sunshine.
We survived.
But good
Tree
luck
Fest.
anyway.
Yes, we survived Tree Fest.
Item 4 is report of General Manager Parks, Recreation and Culture Services related to Forest Adventure Playground. And we have a presentation by our General Manager Parks, Recreation and Culture Services, Lori McKay.
Ms. McKay?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Wanted to spend a few minutes just to give an overview on this report. This has been a very interesting summer, and this topic has generated significant community engagement and interest, as we knew it would. And I think it was very good that at the earliest possible stage we did open the consultation process to allow citizens to share their views on the concept of a forest adventure playground in Coquitlam, and specifically around the idea of such a development in Monday Park. It's very gratifying to see the level of enthusiasm that citizens had for this topic and for the value that they expressed about parks in Coquitlam, and specifically about Monday Park. We have set a new milestone in terms of citizen engagement. We have yet to have a topic that has engaged so many people in our new conversation forums, and that's the discussion forum that we had online. There were 700 posts to that discussion forum, and that is a new benchmark for the city on any topic. And I'm very gratified to know that it was a Parks, Rec and Culture related issue. We also had 700 surveys that were completed either online or manually. And again, that's a very high level of participation. And although these processes are not statistically valid in that they weren't the scientific surveys, they did speak very clearly around citizens' interests and values. Approximately 88% of people that participated expressed that they did not support the idea of a forest adventure playground in Coquitlam, and 89% of the respondents didn't support such a recreational activity in Monday Park. So very consistent messaging coming from those that participated in the processes. Some of the strong themes that came out from those that were against the idea were that they were very interested in keeping the forest in a natural state. There were views expressed that Monday is already a very busy park, and they were concerned that additional attractions might make it busier to the point that it would have a detrimental effect on their enjoyment. People very much enjoy the quiet, untouched aspect of the park, particularly Monday Park. And there were also views expressed that the forest is not a place for a profit business. So these are very important themes for us to listen to. We appreciate very much the effort that citizens took to participate and share their views. This was a very emotional issue for many citizens. At the same time as we were engaging our community in this idea, we also put out a request for proposal to any qualified proponents that there may be that might be interested in such an activity, and we were very pleased that a qualified proponent did come forward. It was Wild Play, a company that already has developed a very positive reputation of success for similar attractions for outdoor recreation throughout the province. They specifically expressed interest in Monday Park if the city was interested in pursuing that. They also identified Glen Park as another alternative. So through those two processes, certainly the city learned a great deal, and we respect very much all of the inputs that were received. But based on staff's assessment, staff recommend at this time that we set the matter in abeyance and bring it forward at a future time. The key rationale around that is, as the committee is aware, the department will be undergoing a strategic planning process for Parks, Recreation and Culture Services. This was something that was approved on our work plan for this year, and because of staffing issues, we've not been able to advance as quickly as we had originally planned on that work. So we will be progressing with that work in 2011. And through that, it allows the community and council and staff to have a fuller discussion around the future of Parks, Recreation and Culture in the city. And through that discussion, I think it would be appropriate to talk about outdoor recreation in general. Things like BMX biking, mountain biking, rock climbing, all kinds of outdoor adventure pursuits, and find out in a long-term visioning where those kinds of outdoor recreation opportunities, where they might fit in Coquitlam, if at all. And I think it's important for us to have that broad community conversation to set that long-term vision before we look at any further at any specific proposals such as this one that we were consulting with over the summer. And so for that reason, I do recommend that we hold this in abeyance and bring it forward as part of a future business planning exercise, potentially in 2012, after we've done that strategic planning work. That concludes my opening remarks.
Thank you. We have a speakers list. Councillor Sikora.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, this thing split the community like you never seen before. This was about when I was sitting in the mayor's chair, the golf course came forward. It's just as big as that. That splits the community in half, does nothing for the Coquitlam residents whatsoever, just splits the community. And I can tell you something, that when something negative like this comes forward, my cell bill runs up by about $75 to $80 a month more because people are calling me. And rightfully so. I'm pleased that people will call me and or email me and say I'm totally opposed to it. Well, I've had a lot of calls, a lot of emails, totally opposed to it. And I can tell you right now that I will not support any commercial in Mundy Park. Neither will I endorse anything 2012. That's a future council, and I will not endorse it whatsoever. I think one thing, that our parks are our parks. The commercial ventures want to go ahead, they can go find the forest somewhere else, but not in our community. And that's as simple as that. And I will not be supporting it for 2012 or at any time. I think we're flogging a dead horse here. Let's kill this dead horse and bury it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Robinson.
Thank you. I actually disagree a little bit with Lou on one point. I don't think it split the community. I think it mobilized the community. I don't think it split anything. I think there were certainly lots of folks who had lots to say. I want to, I guess, sort of speak to two things. One has to do with the process, and the other has to do with sort of the outcome. And I had some anxiety when this came up at the end of our before our summer break. And I thought, didn't like the timing of it. And so I really, lesson learned, is like note to self, defer any controversial discussion, not decision, but even discussion, till after we're back from break. Because not only, I think, were residents pretty frustrated that and pretty anxious that this was about slipping something by them, because that was certainly the tone of the messages I got, but I really didn't get a break, and was looking forward to it, but really felt like I was answering emails. Doug was off in Greece. He had no idea what was going on, but the rest of us, I think, were certainly answering phone calls, emails, and trying to allay anxieties, and it was sort of note to self, defer until the fall. So really want to make sure that we don't do that again. The other thing, and I'm really pleased to hear you say, Ms. McKay, this idea of having a plan, because that was part of what I was feeling frustrated with. Like I like the idea of ecotourism, but we don't have a vision. Like a one-off like this, it's like I don't know that really is going to have economic impact that we say it's going to have. But if there were 4 or 5 other things and there was a plan, and this would be there, we're partnering with Metro on this project over there, and then I would certainly feel comfortable sort of maybe taking a look at how to incorporate this in one of our parks. So I think it's important that we have a plan, that we have some sort of strategy. But I also think we need to have a philosophical discussion in the community about what's appropriate for our parks. Now, there might be some parks where, like an urban forest, that we say, no, we will not have anything other than the forest. But that's just forest. But there might be other parks that we will have some sort of business operating as part of it. Don't know which ones those would be, because I think we need to have the discussion. There may be residents, certainly there were many residents who felt strongly about not having any kind of business for profit in any of our parks. And there were others, certainly less vocal, who said, sure, it's not okay by me. They were certainly less vocal, but there's certainly people out there who think that that's okay. But there really wasn't a discussion piece that needed to happen, I think, just around that from a philosophical perspective. And that certainly raised it for me. The other part about process was I really found that we hadn't really done a good job of, at a minimum, consulting with environmental services about what's the environmental impact of having anything like this in our park. And that was a concern for me, that I think at a minimum, when we have internal resources, before we bring something forward like this, we need to talk with our internal people about what do you think will be some of the implications, so that at least we have the information. And I think that's part of what was frustrating, was we didn't have information. I'm not crazy about option 2 that's being recommended. For similar reasons that Lou had suggested. It's after an election, it's a different council, and so I'm not sure what the other option. I'd like to, at a minimum, take Mundy Park off of the table. That it's just not a possibility. I think if we were to bring this up, I'm trying to think. So what would be different in 2012? Well, maybe we would have this overall strategy. We would have clearer thinking. We would have a vision. Maybe we'll have done a better, what I'll call a communications piece with the community and engage the community more about where we're going. But I don't think it will be any different when it comes to, so Mundy is the ideal place. I don't want to go through this again. So I would actually like to reiterate that I'll support option 2 as long as it doesn't include Mundy Park as an option. So that's part of what I'm thinking. So the other part that I'm thinking of is if the proponent said Glen Park could work, and we're just heading into a design process for Glen Park. I feel like we're in a bit of a jam here because this might be an opportunity, but we don't have a plan. So is there a way, I'm just going to ask, as we plan Glen Park, to keep a part of the park as a possibility, that once we have a vision and we have some clarity, that could be the possible location for something like that?
The Glen Park master planning process is occurring this fall, and so there's lots of opportunity to speak with the community, specifically around Glen Park, around that. The implementation of the master plan will go for many, many years. We don't have enough funding in place in the short term to implement what might be included in a master plan. So by its very nature, this master plan will be quite broad and quite long-term thinking. And so by its very nature, it has some flexibility in it to be able to deal with a changing community that's moving into this area over the long term. In terms of the specific idea of discussion around the adventure playground, my recommendation would not be to incorporate it specifically into the Glen Park Master Plan. And similar to the comments of Selena Robertson, I think any discussion about that would need to be broader and on a citywide basis and speak to some of those sort of philosophies around uses of city parks, anywhere, not specifically in Glen Park. So my suggestion would be that from a broad level discussion around the master plan should have enough flexibility in it to be able to accommodate future needs and demands, but not specifically to identify a forest adventure playground at this time.
Okay. So, what if I understand is that so there's room with the Glen Park Master Plan that if we go through a process that says that parts of certain parks, and Glen might be one of them, the community feels comfortable using for these kinds of things, we could say, well, we've got this master plan and there's this piece here of Glen Park and we could work that in, possibly.
Possibly.
Okay. So I'm not comfortable supporting option 2, mostly because it just leaves it, we can be doing this again with Mundy Park. So I would prefer that we direct staff to bring this idea forward as part of the 2012 business plan to explore after we've done a consultation process about the park philosophy and how we use our parks, but with the understanding that Mundy Park would not be a part of that. I think the message has been clear. I just don't want to go through this again, and I'm concerned that if we just put it in abeyance, it'll come back up again. I think we need to be real clear with residents that we get it. We heard you. Mundy Park is not going to be developed for this kind of activity now or in the future. Certainly, the near future. Anyway. So I'm not going to support option 2.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you. Speaking third, there's not much new to say. obviously, we heard the public, the overwhelming voice for preserving Mundy Park, and just as overwhelming saying we don't really want this kind of a playground. I suspect that that piece of the survey was tainted by the Mundy Park answers, that people didn't really stop and say, what about this kind of a playground somewhere? It was all no. That was my immediate reaction when I looked at the online survey, and I think the results bear it out. I did hear from a few people who were in favor of this kind of a playground, an adventure playground, somewhere in the city, and saw good uses for it and lots of people who would make good use of it. But that's not the answer that we got when we went out and asked the public. We've got an 80-some% rejection rate. And I think we have to respond to that. I think it's critical that we form the city-wide parks plan. What is it that we're trying to get out of our parks? I'm a little bothered that we may get to the point of approving a master plan for Glen Park before we know what we're doing in the city as a whole. Glen Park is the sort of remaining town center available to make it what we're going to need for a long time into the future. And this is going to be a heavily populated corner, and I think it may need a park that's not like any other park that we have. It's a place for people to come together, not necessarily to play sports or to run through the trees, but simply to be together to form the community that needs to be the town center. Spirit Square Park is doing that a little bit right now, but when we get build out down here, Spirit Square Park isn't going to be able to handle that kind of thing. So we need the overall city plan, then the Glen plan. I don't see any reason at any time in the future that staff can't come back to us with any kind of proposal as to how we use our parks. If we would take option one and say no further work, and we get to 2012 and we have a plan in place for the city as a whole, and someone on staff sees a place for an adventure playground or for ecotourism, or to bring that forward, they have to bring that forward to us. But I don't want to direct them what to do in 2012. I want them to respond to the plan that they help us create and deal with that then. And that's my view. And I'm a little unsure of procedure, whether I can move option one at this point or whether we've got to somehow deal with option two, deal with the recommendation before we can do something different. In your hands, Mr. Chair.
Well, if you don't mind, if we just wait till the end of debate and then we can go from there. Thank you. I found this to be a very interesting proposal. And it was interesting enough to most of council, or to all of council, because it was unanimous that this go out to public consultation. This was proposed in a quiet area of the park. The infrastructure was already in place. There was a parking lot behind Spaney Pool, and washrooms were in place. No trees were going to be hurt. Everything was going to be left standing. There was going to have to be no changes to the park. None of the pathways would be affected. There's a big educational component to this. People learning about the park, learning about trees, learning about nature, and a new respect for the forest, because you get a different perspective up in the tree canopy, looking around at what's up there. So, keeping all those things in mind, all of us on council thought it was a good enough idea to go out and ask the public what they thought about it. Well, we heard a lot about it. And it's quite apparent now that putting this in Mundy Park is a no-go. I'm fine with that. This is what the democratic process is all about. But I also want to be open to ecotourism. I want to be open to looking at Coquitlam's natural attributes as a responsible council and as a responsible community, we have to look at ways of supporting our business and supporting the community in general. So we can't just say flat right off the bat, no, we can't. We have to turn a blind eye to any opportunity that comes along. I thank staff for bringing this forward. It was. I still believe it's a good idea. Not in Monday Park, though. When it comes to the recommendation of option 2, I'm a little uneasy about having a specific date, 2012, looking at it. Like I say, I'd like to be open to anything that comes along, any opportunity that presents itself anywhere in Coquitlam. But I also want to be able to have a plan. I want to be able to have a philosophy or some starting point to go forward on how we view our parks and how the community is open to receiving business ventures and natural attractions. Because like I say, Coquitlam is a desirable place, and there are a lot of areas that we can promote and invite people to come in and enjoy what lots of people here in Coquitlam enjoy on a daily basis. So I hope when debate is over that we can talk about maybe taking out the dates on 2012 and going forward with a plan or formulating a plan and being open to any suggestions that come forward along the way. Mayor Stewart.
Thank you very much. I appreciate all the comments that have come before me, because there are a few things we got out of this process, and I agree that all of council wanted to hear what the public had to say about this, and it was unanimous. One of the concerns I had, and I know other councillors have had that, council members have had that, was timing. This perhaps one of the lessons learned here is let's not do this kind of process over the summer anymore. I used to criticize when I remember there was one process involving traffic calming, and the process came out in my neighborhood over the summer. We missed it. In the end, City Council ended up having to go back in and reverse themselves because they recognized that there wasn't enough information and there wasn't enough ability for the public to offer their opinion. So I think timing was one thing. I had my reservations about the location. As a boy, I used to play and I used to explore Mundy Park. It's always been a jewel. I've lived all my life here in Coquitlam, and it's always been a jewel in the neighborhood that I've lived all my life in. But at the same time, I don't want us as council to be stifling the creativity that I want us to continue to foster. I want staff to be able to bring ideas to us, explore options. And I want the public to be able to see that we're exploring lots of different options. I was a bit disappointed in the tone of, and I know Councillor Robinson also wrote a comment related to the tone of some of the comments, because there was no hidden agenda here. This was us going out to the public and finding out from them what they thought of this concept. I think it was a bold proposal, and I think we need to be bold sometimes, and we also need to listen to the public, and that's what we offered to do. I heard from a lot of people who said the same thing. They said, I love walking the trails of Mundy Park. Please leave it just the way it is. I heard that over and over and over again. And I kept thinking back to 32 years ago. I had a job in the Parks Department building trails, including some of the trails in Mundy Park. And I remember at the time there were people who were against us cutting the trails through in Mundy Park because they wanted the park left just as it was back then. And of course, there's a swimming pool. There are lots of fields built into Mundy Park. I suspect now that Mundy Park needs to stay pretty much as it is, that we're not going to be having additional amenities, although I'd like to see us contemplate a nature house in Mundy Park. So it's an educational interpretive center in Mundy Park. Nonetheless, we heard from the public said leave it the way it is. And so I would urge us perhaps to, whatever we do with options here, to make the statement in addition to that this doesn't happen in Mundy Park. Whether we contemplate it elsewhere or not, Mundy Park is out, and I agree with those councillors who have said the same thing. And ultimately, I do think we need to back up and do a parks master plan, identify what we need out of our parks, and identify what we have in our parks, and what we need, what the public would like to see in our parks system. And as I mentioned those things, I'd like to see a wildlife rescue center. I'd like to see a cycling facility somewhere in our parks, perhaps in partnership with a cycling retailer. Although there you go, there we're going to end up with a business that could be doing work in our parks. I think there are some potential partnerships like those that we ought to be exploring, but it needs to come from a master plan. And so we have an OCP that defines how we develop from the point of view of zoning and across the community, but we don't have that official parks plan, OPP. I think we should work hard on identifying, and council has been in agreement on this point. We should get there. I think we need to prioritize that one upwards so that we can have that plan help inform the decisions we make on when they come up like this, the smaller proposals. As far as the proposal itself, I've just been appointed to the Metro Vancouver Parks Committee. That's the regional parks like Colony Farm and Tynehead and Minnekata. And at the last meeting, the chair of the committee came up with this thought that maybe Metro Vancouver should be contemplating the thing that Maple Ridge has, the thing that Parks Committee members have seen in other communities, the forest amenity that includes a zip line or not or whatever. And so we're going to see Metro Vancouver Parks perhaps explore the same sort of thing. And I've heard from other councillors in other communities, they watched perhaps how this one unfolded, and because they realized that we as councils have to be responsive. We have to respond to the public's perception of what they'd like to see in the parks. And so going back to the official plan, maybe we need to have a real deep engagement of the public about the kinds of things they want to see in parks and the kinds of rules they want to see applied to parks across our community. So I'll reiterate that I do hope that whatever we do here, we don't have a similar process over summer, and that we do make the decision today that Mundy Park is not where we put this if we do decide to put it somewhere.
Thank you. Before we go to a second round, is there anybody else? Councillor Score.
Thank you, Chair. We talk about Glen Park, possibly a spot in Glen Park. Well, we also remember council members have had a presentation on an off-leash dog park in Glen Park. That was another site. So if you put that in there, you'll need parking and a whole lot of things. So, and then if you put a commercial thing there, you're certainly going to be building parking lots for a commercial venture that the city does, may gain some money, may not. And when I say gain some money, may not, I can address our Poirier Street complex. I was there the other day at the next game. The place is full. In every washroom, doesn't matter which washroom you went, there was one like a hair dryer for drying your hands. 1,500 people, they're walking out of those washrooms going like this. They're using their hankies. The ladies are using their Kleenexes because we don't have no towels in there. And I hear some rumors that the Parks Recreation Director's direction was that there'll never be any paper towels there. Well, how do you really operate something like this? I mean, certainly you got management there that should be able to adhere to something like that there's a problem, and deal with it, And it's through the curling rink, through the ladies' washrooms, men's washrooms, all over the place. The same thing. And a lot of people walking out of the washrooms not washing their hands at all.
Okay.
They're going to stand in that lineup.
Back to the adventure playground?
Yeah, the adventure playground, yeah. So there's been tourist attractions coming to Coquitlam. A few of them that we turned down. And now we seem to, all of a sudden, tourists. And what's going to happen? The fact is that, you're going to build more parking. And I don't know how much money I hear in the paper or some write-up that Maple Ridge is getting $500,000 a year. Is it a benefit to the city? I don't think so. Because I can imagine there'd be more staff, more managers hired, whatever it may be. I'm sorry that I have to be so critical, but the fact is our city has not adhered to the budgeting whatsoever. It seems like on a yearly basis, more staff, more budget, more money. And people in this community have had it up to the hilt, and I have too. So very, very simple. I think sometimes enough is enough. And if you want to put in Glen Park, I don't know where the doggy park is going to go. You see? And there's very few parking spaces there. And when there's soccer being played there, there's no parking in there left for anybody else. So we go on, and we're going to do these massive studies and everything else for the plan for all the parks. I think we need to stay away from our parks. If these people are so interested to put a commercial venture in, let them go to northeast Coquitlam, buy up 15 acres of land somewhere that's heavily forested, and go to it. Build the parking lot and everything else. Whoop-de-doo. Be my guest. But leave our parks alone.
Thank you. Now, we don't have a recommendation here.
I have a suggestion of recommendation, and if folks can help me tweak it, that council consider ecotourism opportunities once a master parks plan has been approved. Because what I've certainly heard is that we don't have a vision or an idea of what parks, what we need, what we don't need, where we have room, and there could be in 3 weeks another ecotourism opportunity that comes forward. And we could wind up doing the same kind of discussion. And I wonder if it makes sense that we don't consider ecotourism opportunities until we have an idea from our parks perspective about what we have, what we need, and where we're going. And then we can start looking at some of these things. Just a suggestion.
I think that's a good idea. I would be a little hesitant, though. I like the flavor of that, but I would be a little hesitant to put the kibosh on anything that comes along, not knowing how long it'll be until we have a master parks plan. So
maybe it'll light some fires and we can get that going faster.
If I could make a suggestion, maybe along those lines, but still keep the door open if something came along that should come to council's attention. Mayor Stewart?
Well, I think I've listened to the council members, and I think the appropriate motion might simply be at this point that this proposal be rejected, and that the potential for future facilities like this, that would be part 2, I guess, the potential for future facilities like this and any other future facilities ought to be included in the development of a master parks plan as soon as reasonably possible.
That makes sense in the development. It still allows things to come forward. Councillor Reamer.
Thank you. I haven't spoken because I actually agree with everything that's already been sent. I don't think we should be doing this in Mundy Park. I'm not even sure we should be considering Glen Park. I know we have received some suggestions about other areas, the Northeast, the Westwood Plateau area. So my question for staff is, with regards to Councillor Robinson's suggestion, we want to have this parks plan in place, yet we also don't want to put the kibosh on some really good suggestion that might come up. Is it possible for us to move up the parks plan? Through the chair, the park plan is already a top priority for the department, and it's been endorsed by council to be part of our work plan in 2010. Our challenge is really a staffing capacity challenge right now. We've had a number of staff changes, and so consequently we just do not have the resources to complete that work in 2010. We are in the process of actively recruiting now. We hope to be at full complement again very soon, and it is the number one priority for that work unit. You may recall that we had established a special project this year in order to have someone assigned to be able to work on that, but that individual has left the organization now. So once again, we're just short-staffed in this area to advance the work. I can assure committee that this is our number one priority in our work plan, and we will get to it as soon as we have the staff resources to assign it. Thank you.
Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you. I agree with the sense of what Councillor Robinson says, but it seems to me that it doesn't directly deal with the report that's in front of us. It seems to me that moving and adopting, recommending to Council option 1 deals with the matter that's in front of us. And staff have certainly heard, I think, across the committee, well, a desire to get a plan in place and to hear about any opportunity that staff thinks is worth considering. We're open to that. We encourage that. We want to hear it. I'm not sure we need a motion to say that. And on that basis, if it's in order, I would move option 1.
Okay, you have a seconder?
I'll second it.
Discussion?
What's option 1?
Option 1 is no
Drop it.
further work on this issue.
Bury the horse.
Well, certainly that for me, that's fine for me, except I don't want to give the impression that we're closed to any further ideas anywhere down the road.
Well, I think I said that.
Yeah. Okay, well, as long as we get the flavor of that one. No more discussion on that. All in favor? Opposed? Unanimous. Next.
Moving on to item 5, which is a report of General Manager, Parks, Recreation and Cultural Services, Spirit Square Final Construction Report. The recommendation is that Council authorize staff to utilize the balance of the funds remaining from the Spirit Square project for the installation of a pedestrian crossing and bollards, site signage and recognition at a cost of $87,000.
Councillor Sikora.
Yeah, thank you. I will not be supporting this. I think that instead of that sidewalk, there are a few things that are missing in there. That Spirit Square has been built there to a tune of $2.7 million, just under $2.7 million. And I'm hearing all kinds of comments in the community. Number one, it's not sprinkled. So the grass is drying, unless there's somebody there with the hand hose that hoses it down at $2.7 million. That's pretty frightening to me. Secondly, the people are telling me where's the washrooms for that facility. Thirdly, I noticed that the provincial government even dictated with their $500,000 donation to the city of taxpayers' money, which the city donated $2.7 million, $2.2 million, that the fact is the plaques, is that the provincial government drew up what should be on a plaque. Well, you know, it's pretty nice for somebody that's a minor, small donator and is going to dictate what should be in that park as far as signage is concerned, as far as plaques are concerned, and a few other things. And I've complained from day one on it. I'd like to know when is the new plaque going to go up?
Through the chair, in response to a number of your points, I'll start with the plaque. This particular report would provide the means in order to install a City of Coquitlam plaque that has been identified as something that is missing. Councillor Sikora is absolutely correct that a condition of receiving the provincial funding was that the province would have a recognition plaque, but that didn't recognize fully the city recognition that we would like to have. So in this report, a portion of the $87,000 would go towards having a City of Coquitlam plaque installed. With respect to the sprinkling, Spirit Square is an irrigated lawn area, and so it has received watering. I'm not aware that there were any maintenance problems with that irrigation system. If anything, we have a drainage problem on that lawn area, not a problem with water at all. But staff will certainly investigate that and see if there were any irregularities in the watering schedule over the summer months. And with respect to the washrooms, the closest washrooms are in Glen Pine Pavilion, just next to Spirit Square, and that's an open public facility that people can use those washrooms when, of course, Glen Pine is open, and it would not be open, at the same all of the hours that Spirit Square might be used. An alternative to washroom facilities for major events would be the washrooms that are located in City Hall as well.
The library.
Okay, so how much would the plaque cost?
I don't have those details with me today, but I'd be happy to provide them after the meeting.
Okay, Mr. Chair, when this debate is over, I'd like to make a motion on this $87,000.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, okay, thank you.
Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm on side with Councillor Sikora. I can't support this recommendation, but I think my reasons are somewhat different. Spirit Square has been open for a fairly short period of time. I think we're all surprised at the intensity of use, at how popular it is. It's getting lots of traffic. Even the mayor goes out and plays soccer with people there some evenings when he's up to it. And it's early in the year. I alluded earlier to the fact that the ArtsConnect is not relying on the weather. Well, I think we've got to recognize the weather. I'm not sure what's going to happen to that park over the winter. I think we need to let it go through a full year of use before we make any decision as to how to deal with any remaining construction funds, because we may find that there are things that need to be done to perfect the park, to make it highest and best use. And this is not the time to do that. I'm not particularly concerned about plaques. Repairing the roadway, I don't think belongs as part of the Spirit Square project. Spirit Square didn't dig up the road. I'm not sure which various projects dug up the road, but surely when people are allowed to dig up the road, there's some provision for putting it back to as good as it was. And I think we need to find that money elsewhere. So I would prefer to see a report come forward after Spirit Square's had a full year of use and we're able to make good decisions about what's needed to make it the best it can possibly be. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just going to echo Councillor Nicholson's feelings on this. I'd like to hold off. I'm not so sure that grass will stand up all winter. I think I see it now. It's heavy use. There's people on it all the time. And come the end of September, October, when the rains really set in with a vengeance and it's still being used, and the drainage isn't quite what it should be, I'm afraid that the grass is, there's going to be some damage to it, which won't be able to be fixed throughout the whole course of the winter, and we may have to make some decisions on that next spring. So it would be my wish to hang on to that money and just keep that in reserve to see what we have to do. Mayor Stewart.
That's another example, I think, of the creativity that staff created a space that I think is amazing. And the public obviously thinks the same, because every single night, if you go by there at 9 o'clock at night or 10 o'clock at night, you'll see more people there than in a lot of shopping centers that we have. There's really been an enthusiasm over that space. And I agree, though, that the experience over the next few months will be more telling, perhaps, than the experience over the summer. We will possibly see what we need to do with the lawn. I suspect we will see what we need to do with the lawn. The lawn was a really creative space and was heavily used over the summer. But now we've got some challenges related to how do we deal with the amount of use that's been that park has been put to, and its neighbors aren't complete yet. As we complete the development of the town center, as Councillor Nicholson I think said, we're going to need park space in the town center more than anywhere else, perhaps, and that's going to be, we have to make the best use of the space we do have, and I'm fully supportive of hanging on related to the decision on this one. I don't think we need to move forward with it at this point. I do want to see that completed, though. It would make a logical extension of Spirit Square across a busy, not a very busy road, but it would also remind drivers that they're going through a community square, and that space would connect Buchanan Square across the street in front of City Hall with the Spirit Square. and I'm fine with the plaque if we want to advance the plaque. Let's remind ourselves, though, that we applied for the grant. We went to the provincial government and said, yes, we'd love to have a grant. And the provincial government had several conditions. One was, if we give you the grant, we put up a plaque. We can put up another one if we choose to, and it sounds to me like at least one member of council wants to make sure that we do that. So let's move forward at council's wish.
Ms. McKay.
Thank you. I just wanted to provide some clarifying information with respect to the pedestrian crossing. The pedestrian crossing was an integral part of the design of Spirit Square, and we did have to tear up the road in order to bring the utilities over to Spirit Square, particularly water and electricity. And so the damage that you see on the road and the patchwork asphalt, there is a direct consequence of the park work, and so we are responsible for remediating that. The original design that was approved did call for a raised pedestrian crossing to create that connectivity between Spirit Square and Buchanan Square. We believe that we can do a less costly option and still create that benefit of connectivity, but we do continue to bear the responsibility for remediating the road damage that was done as a consequence of the park development.
Thank you. Councillor Robinson.
Thank you. I certainly appreciate Councillor Nicholson's perspective, and it's kind of like you make an investment and you want to make sure that you're not going to have to get surprises. So I do like this idea of sort of perhaps deferring it. But I do wonder if it's two things. I think the Coquitlam Spirit Square, the story, is really important, because I've certainly been out there for some of the concerts, and people love the fish, but they haven't really been able to always make the connection with the row and the dam. Like, they haven't made the connection. So if we could break down some of it, I think it would be helpful. So I would love to be able to say, get that story up there now, but certainly the road work and the crosswalk, you know what, I agree. I think I do remember it was part of the plan, and I think it would be a nice connection. But there might be some other uh-ohs that we may need to hang on to these funds for. So if we can get it broken down and then maybe pick and choose. The other question that I had was, can we also get a sign that says washrooms this way? Because I think those of us who live in the area and hang out here know that there's washrooms there, but there were certainly lots of folks from other communities who came out on those Friday night concerts who were looking around, and you could tell that they needed to go. They were dancing, and then you could point them to that. So it would be helpful to have that as part of the signage.
Ms. McKay.
Welcome to my world. Parks are never finished. Even when you have the ribbon cut and the grand opening, there's always more work to do, and it's so wonderful to see how where you are of how this park is coming to life and learning and growing. The concept around the signage that would potentially incorporate a plaque telling the story, so some interpretation around the design, as well as wayfinding signage and regulatory signage. The thought was the most efficient way to do that, the most cost-effective way, and also the way that would achieve the highest design standard, would be to incorporate all of those elements into a central kiosk, if you will. So instead of having the plaque over here and posts with, park signs all over the place and then wayfinding directional signage somewhere else, to have a central communication kiosk or place in the park where people could get all of that information. They could get the interpretive information that tells the story, the beautiful story of the park. They could see the recognition plaque there. They could also see the directional signage, how to get to City Hall, how to get to the library, how to get to washrooms. So this was the idea, to incorporate these elements into this one kiosk. The idea of separating them out, of course, is achievable. I think it would drive costs up over time, as well as create more clutter in the park by having lots of different places and strategies to communicate that important information. There's no urgency around the plaque or the wayfinding signage or the interpretive signing. But like many of you, staff have seen how people have been using it. They've seen many of the same similar things that you have seen. And we could potentially do that work now, or that work could be deferred to another time. There's not urgency, although I think there is perhaps more of a case of urgency around the pedestrian crossing.
Councillor Sikora?
Yeah, so here we are, we spent $2.7 million just under that. We have poor drainage. We need chaos. We need many, many other things in there. So, you know, I'm wondering if anybody can answer me, what is the total bill going to be at the end if we do all these wonderful things that may be required in there, washrooms and a few other things? You're going to run $750,000, $500,000, what is it going to be?
The report that you have before you is for $87,000 to do the work that's identified in the report. It does not include washrooms, which could add, you know, $250,000 if we were to think about adding washrooms to that facility. With the completed work as recommended in the report, the project would come in on budget. Right now, the project is under budget by $87,000. So we have $87,000 that we could elect, the committee and council could elect to spend to at least finish the park to this stage. Any future work or any additional items such as washrooms or additional pieces of infrastructure would be items that would be brought forward to council as part of capital budget planning, and it would be prioritized against any other park improvement works for any other parks across the city.
And the city put in about $80,000 put on functions for the balance of this year. Am I correct? Somewhere around there? From the opening ceremony to carry on to make sure that there's activity in that park. Am I correct?
Through the chair, council approved one-time funding of $40,000 for pilot programming for 2010. And staff will be reporting back to council with the results of that pilot program, and council will have the opportunity to deliberate and decide whether they wish to continue to fund programming in Spirit Square.
Okay, with that, Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we have a city plaque, appropriate city plaque put up there, ASP, and the remaining money that's left over be left in abeyance. I'll make that motion.
Is there a seconder? Okay. Is there anything else?
No.
Mayor Stewart.
Thank you. Actually, Ms. McKay just reminded me that I think on behalf of the City Council, I do want to acknowledge the staff, the enthusiasm, the design creativity that went into a team, a citizens team as well, that helped design that square. And since it opened, the amount of the dedicated staff that have really done a great job, I think, of working with the public, creating the enthusiasm. It's a great problem to have a Spirit Square that has more people in it than we anticipated, and therefore more wear and tear than we anticipated. I don't think I'd want standalone washrooms in the square. I think they're well placed in the building next door to the square. The city owns some other land next to the square, and that may be a location for future connections to the civic square. But I do want to acknowledge on behalf of council the staff, and I hope you'll pass that on to the programming staff that I think have done a pretty amazing job. Seeing Tony Prophet as a sound man was also quite different. He was very enthusiastic in his role as well.
Thank you. Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I didn't second Councillor Sikora's motion, primarily because I heard what Ms. McKay said about a kiosk, about the benefit of doing this as a one-off, to putting all the signage, the interpretation, the plaque, the directions, where you go, doing it all as one. I don't have a will to move this forward today. I see some budget numbers around the roadworks. I don't see any around kiosk signage and the other things that are requested. I think we'd be better able to deal with this if it came back to us as a sort of one from column A, one from column B set of choices. Roadwork would cost you this, a kiosk would cost you that. Other things, bollards, I think you said 15,000, something like that. And I think then we'd be in a position to make some logical choices about whether we want to spend some now, whether we want to hold off and see what the winter brings in terms of money needs. And that's not, I don't know, is that a motion or is that a direction or?
We can make it a motion. We can work with the clerk here to spiff it up a little bit, maybe.
Help, Jerry.
Well, you could also do it as staff direction for staff to report back with a breakdown of the costs.
Seems fine.
Yeah. So we'll go with staff direction on this then? And you caught all that, did you, Ms. McKay?
Yes, I did.
Perfect. So we can just go without a motion on this one then and go with staff direction. Great. That's it for, we have some things for around the table, and at a previous meeting before the break, a question was asked about the Ted Fridge field where the turf was coming up on one corner of it. Did we ever get any answers on that?
Yes, thank you for the question. Yes, we have investigated that. The situation specifically was in the very hot temperatures this summer. There was some lifting of the artificial turf, and staff have been monitoring that field ever since it was installed. There's some deficiencies that were identified, and staff had an ongoing conversation with both the manufacturer as well as the installation company, and because of the lifting that happened in the summer, there was renewed enthusiasm on following up with both of those suppliers to get to the bottom of this. So discussions are ongoing, and we are aggressively seeking a solution, a permanent solution to the problem.
Okay. And one more. Our facility up at on Poirier, the sports center, which is just screaming along and looking more beautiful than ever, should be coming to the construction should be coming to a close. Do you have any idea on an opening?
Yes, I'm pleased to confirm that a grand opening celebration date has been established for October the 30th, and the city, along with our many community stakeholder groups, are putting together an exciting program that we expect will attract many residents to come and celebrate. This complex has been many years in the making. The community has had the benefit of seeing it as a work in progress for a long time. Excited as we go and challenged as we go, and certainly later this fall, construction will be finished. We'll have full building occupancy, and it will be time for the entire community to celebrate. So October 30th is the date, and committee and council will be receiving invitations, and we certainly hope that you will all be able to actively participate.
Well, huge kudos to staff and everyone involved, because not only did this come in under budget, it's getting finished ahead of time, and it was kept open while it was under construction. I'm really proud of what we've been able to offer the community, and hats off to your staff for this.
If I could, Mr. Chair, also acknowledge the Strategic Initiatives Department that has had carriage of the project for the last year, and they have been wonderful collaborators, and a success like this comes through many very qualified, dedicated staff throughout the city working together with the community to make it happen.
Councillor Reamer.
Thank you, and kudos to staff. I echo what Councillor McDonnell has said. Do we have any idea what time of day the opening will be? Will it be an evening thing or an afternoon thing?
The preliminary program is calling for 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else around the table? No? Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
And it's unanimous. Wait.
The chair may want to acknowledge that we won a national championship.
Oh, yes. Hats off to our Minto Cup champions. That was our Junior A lacrosse. It's first ever for Coquitlam, first ever for the club. We're very proud of that.
New facility.
And in the new facility. What a way to kick off the new facility. National champions.
Be out of town again.
At junior it is, Junior A.
For juniors.
Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you.